Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Okay, so we often think about police officers, military personnel, right? Those incredibly high-pressure jobs, split-second decisions, life and death stuff. But today, we're going to look at something maybe less obvious: nutrition. How does what they eat actually shape their performance under all that pressure? Yeah, the core question is, how does diet impact mental and physical performance in these roles?
Mm.
Even if someone doesn't have, say, a diagnosed TBI or mental illness or isn't on psych meds, is their lunch, their everyday food choices really making a difference when things get critical?
Oh, absolutely. The answer is a definite yes. Now, we're not necessarily talking about effects as neurologically extreme as someone with like a compromised blood-brain barrier, but the impact on mood, decision-making, emotional regulation. It's incredibly significant for these professionals. Think about it, when one single choice could mean life or death, even those sort of subtle shifts driven by diet, they matter a lot.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack that. What are the mechanisms, how does food actually degrade performance and mentality sometimes?
Right.
And crucially, what can be done? How can individuals and maybe the institutions they work for help protect these protectors? So maybe start with the why. What makes this group uniquely vulnerable? It's something specific.
Well, what's really interesting here is that for police, for military folks, the main vulnerability often isn't some prior injury. It's the job itself. The nature of their work involves, long periods of high alert, exposure to pretty traumatic stuff sometimes, huge psychological pressure. All that leads to chronic stress. And chronic stress, well, it floods the body with cortisol.
Cortisol, right? The fight or flight hormone. So if the stress is constant, the cortisol is constant, what does that do long term?
Exactly. And having those high cortisol levels day in, day out, it has a couple of major impacts that really set the stage for diet to become a problem. First, it can increase what we call intestinal permeability. You might have heard of it as leaky gut.
Leaky gut. I've heard that linked to things like TBI before.
Right, but chronic stress can also damage that gut lining. It's maybe not as dramatic, but it leads to this low-grade systemic inflammation simmering throughout the body constantly. And second, the stress really disrupts the gut microbiome too. It messes up that delicate balance of good and bad bacteria, and this is where it gets really directly relevant to mood and mind. That disruption hits neurotransmitter production hard. Did you know a huge chunk of your body's serotonin, that feel-good chemical, is actually made in the gut?
Wow. No, I didn't realize it was that significant. So gut health is directly tied to brain chemistry. That makes sense. And then I guess the other elephant in the room for these jobs, sleep or lack of it.
Oh, absolutely. Sleep disruption is, yeah, a critical factor, maybe even a multiplier. You've got shift work, long hours, always needing to be hypervigilant. It just destroys normal sleep patterns.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And poor sleep. It dramatically worsens the stress response. It seriously impairs judgment. And here's the kicker: it drives cravings. Cravings for high-sugar, high-fat comfort foods, which of course makes everything worse. It's a really vicious cycle.
So they're tired, stressed, and then craving the exact foods that are going to tank their energy and focus later.
Precisely. So you put it all together, even if someone starts out perfectly healthy, the chronic job stress plus the bad sleep creates this physiological environment, an environment where the food they eat can have this really outsized negative impact on their mental state, their judgment, their overall performance. Their body is basically primed for it.
It's incredible. The job itself is almost rewiring their physiology. Okay, so we have why now, how they become vulnerable. Let's make it concrete. What does this actually look like day to day? How does poor nutrition show up as performance problems? Not personality changes maybe, but real critical issues.
Exactly. It's less about becoming a different person and more about, their operational effectiveness being subtly undermined. Probably the most common and honestly dangerous effect is blood sugar getting out of whack. That dysregulation, it directly hits judgment.
How so? Give us an example.
Okay, picture this. Happens all the time. An officer grabs a big coffee, maybe a couple of donuts at the start of their shift. Quick energy.
Right, sure. Same standard.
But then, maybe 2-3 hours later, bam, the sugar crash hits. And during that crash, they can feel irritable, anxious, definitely fatigued. But the critical part is the brain fog. Intense brain fog and impaired executive function.
Executive function.
Yeah.
Like decision making.
Exactly. Their ability to make complex, rational decisions under pressure, it's significantly reduced. And that could mean, a poor tactical choice, maybe an overreaction in a tense moment.
That's genuinely scary. It's not just feeling tired, it's actual cognitive impairment when they need clarity the most.
It really is. And it's not just the crashes. Think about a steady diet of, well, convenient food, fast food, processed snacks, sugary energy drinks.
Which, let's be honest, is probably pretty common given the job demands.
Very common. And that kind of diet creates chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body. Now, this doesn't suddenly change who they are, but it lowers their baseline. Over time, it can just make them, a bit more negative, maybe more cynical, lower resilience to stress, maybe a shorter fuse. It creeps up.
So it erodes their coping ability over time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then there's the nutrient side. These diets, they're often really lacking in stuff the brain desperately needs. Things like omega-3s, the healthy fats that fight inflammation, B vitamins for energy, for neurotransmitters, magnesium, which helps calm the nervous system.
Right. Basic building blocks for a healthy brain.
Exactly. So if the brain is constantly underfueled, it's just less resilient. It's going to be hit harder by a stressful call or just a tough day. It won't bounce back as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Less resilience.
And one more thing, often overlooked. Physical gut distress. Imagine eating something inflammatory, something that doesn't agree with you. You get bloating, gas, maybe stomach pain. Now, picture trying to maintain total focus in a high-stakes situation while feeling physically uncomfortable.
Yeah, that would be distracting. Massively distracting.
It's a huge distraction.
Right.
It pulls focus away from situational awareness, which is absolutely paramount in their line of work. It's not just uncomfortable, it's a potential tactical liability.
Wow. That point about gut distress as a tactical liability, that really lands. It shows how deeply connected the physical and mental are, especially under pressure. Okay, so given these really direct, sometimes immediate impacts, how do we fix it? Or at least, how do we help? What's the strategy to protect these folks?
Yeah, that's the critical question. And it really needs a two-pronged approach. It takes individual effort and institutional support. They have to work together.
Okay, let's break that down. What can individuals do?
All right, on the individual side, number one, prioritize protein and healthy fats. Every meal, ideally. Why? Because they stabilize blood sugar. They prevent those energy crashes we talked about, the ones that mess with judgment. Think eggs, chicken, fish, avocado, nuts, seeds, that kind of thing.
Stable energy, stable focus. Makes sense.
Second, strategic snacking. This is key for people on the go. Keep non-perishable healthy snacks handy. Patrol car, locker, go bag, whatever. Things like jerky, nuts, seeds, maybe some protein bars, but check the sugar content on those. The goal is to avoid grabbing junk food just because it's easy when you're suddenly starving.
Preparation prevents poor choices. Got it.
What else? Hydration. But with water. Dehydration itself tanks cognitive function. And sugary sodas, most energy drinks, they just put you back on that blood sugar roller coaster. Water needs to be the default.
Simple, but probably often neglected.
Very often. Then limit caffeine, especially later in the shift. Look, caffeine can help, but too much, too late. It ramps up anxiety and absolutely demolishes sleep quality, which, as we know, just feeds that negative cycle for the next day.
Right, sets you up for failure.
And finally, maybe the single most effective strategy for individuals, meal prep. Taking some time, maybe on an off day, to cook healthy meals for the week ahead. It takes the guesswork out. It makes the healthy choice the easy choice when you're tired and stressed.
Yeah, meal prep seems essential for unpredictable schedules. Okay, so that's the individual side. What about the institutions, the departments, the military branches?
Right. They have a huge role to play.
Yeah.
First up, education. Wellness programs often cover physical fitness, maybe mental health counseling, which is great, but they need to include performance nutrition and, crucially, frame it right. Not as dieting for weight loss, but as fueling for tactical performance. Make it operational.
Fueling for performance. I like that framing. Changes the perspective.
Exactly. Second, improve the food environment. Look at what's actually available in station houses, on bases, in academies. Are there healthy, affordable options? Can vending machines offer something better than chips and candy bars? We need to actively push back against that default culture of, cop food, donuts, pizza, fast food. Make healthy choices accessible.
So change the environment to support the right choices.
Yes. Third, and this is big, leadership buy-in. When command staff, the bosses, actually model healthy eating habits and encourage it, that gives subordinates unspoken permission to prioritize their own nutrition. It makes it okay.
Culture change starts at the top. Makes sense.
Definitely. And lastly, don't forget sleep hygiene. Institutions have to acknowledge how critical sleep is. They need to provide real education, real resources on how personnel can maximize their rest, even with difficult shift schedules. It's not a luxury, it's essential for performance and safety.
So education, environment, leadership, and sleep support. That's a solid institutional framework. It really seems clear then. While the effects might not always be as, I don't know, visible as some other conditions, the reality of these high-stress jobs makes people highly vulnerable. Vulnerable to how food impacts their thinking, their mood, their reactions, right when they need to be at their sharpest.
Absolutely. The takeaway from the research is pretty straightforward. Protection comes when we start treating nutrition as a core part of operational readiness. It's not separate. It directly impacts performance, their safety, and, yeah, the safety of the public they serve.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for everyone listening. If there's such a direct link between what these professionals eat and their ability to make these critical, sometimes life-altering decisions, what broader responsibility do we have
As a society,
to support their nutritional well-being and really acknowledge how much it matters for public safety? Something to chew on.